Debra L Morrison is a TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and international motivational speaker. She's a recipient of the Marquis's Who's Who Women of Influence Award, a seasoned life-centered certified financial planner and empowered retirement coach. She partners with women to maximize their return on life, not just their investments. Debra has been featured on CNN, ABC, and MSG's Metro Money Television. She's also been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the New York Times, Business Week, Money Magazine, Ladies' Home Journal, Nation's Business, CNN Money, Reader's Digest, Kiplinger's, and more. Debra coaches women to build their confidence, inspire a fulfilled life, and create an empowered relationship with their money. She teaches women that it's possible to both live in the moment while saving for the future. Known for her easy-to-understand speaking style, Debra combines sage wisdom with refreshing humor. Now you're in for a treat. Please welcome Debra L Morrison.
Reverend. Oh, thanks so much for joining us. I'm so appreciative of you and your time. I know how valuable, well, I don't know, but I have an idea how valuable it is. And I want to introduce each of you to Lynn Winfield. And Lynn was the youngest of 4 children, and yet her childhood presented unspeakable challenges. Her mom died when she was 6 years old. She moved to live with her aunt until her dad remarried. When she was 8, she moved back with him, and he died at Lynn's age 8. And her stepmom died after that. And I say, Lynn, pray tell, how did you manage to navigate all that grief?
Debra, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. I listened to Lynn and to Lisa. I guess today was the L's for you. And I was just amazed at, what they had to say. The question you asked is not something I could really answer because I don't think it was me. I think God chooses where to place you, and he placed me from my birth with challenges. The fact that I was placed in as the youngest of 4 children. My parents had their first child when they were 34, because they both were the same age. And so they had me when they were 40.
Wow.
So they were already considered much older.
Yes.
My aunt and uncle that we ended up living with for 2 years, they had children, but their children were grown and their children was our age. So, I mean, the fact, and my father and mother, neither of one of them had high school educations. Yes. They migrated from Mississippi to Ohio, because that's where some of his other family went. And so I came into that kind of family. We were not a middle-class family at all. We were a working class family. My father worked, my mother was a stay-at-home. From the time I remember her, she was sick on and off, in the hospital, out of the hospital, doing some things as a mother, but for the most part, I spent 5 years there with her, and she was pretty sick off and on. And then when I turned 6 in January of 61, I believe she may have even been in the hospital when I turned 6. And just 4 months later, she was gone.
Oh.
At 6, you don't know how to handle that. We often tell the story of the day my mother died. My sister and brother heard the landlord saying that Miss Whitfield had died at Fort City Hospital that day. And they were like, "Oh, our mother died?" And he said, "Oh, no, not your mother. It was another Miss Whitfield." And so they told us, and we had gone to school. And when we came home from school that evening, all the relatives who are normally not at the house were in the living room, and my dad was home from work. And so it was like, when he told us then that our mother had died. Well, instead of what you would expect, the grief, the tears, we ran to tell our friends that the landlord was talking about our mother.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And it was her, when she started crying, that we realized, oh, wow, wait a minute, the impact of that. But that's just because as children, you don't really know. We were between the ages of 6 and 12. And then we went to live with my aunt and uncle. And they, like I said, they didn't have any children there, so we were their children. Basically, they moved into a new neighborhood, put us into a really good school district. My father remarried when I was 8, and my father actually didn't die until I was 10.
You know, I'm right. I'm wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, he did. He died when I was 10. So I always think of it, everything went in twos at that point in time. Mom, 6, 8, 10. And so I stayed with my stepmother. Now, I changed things. I know you call this busting barriers.
Mm.
I say challenges, because a barrier means you can't move past it.
Uh-huh.
It's there, you're stuck, it's going to prevent your movement and access to something. It only becomes a barrier when you allow it to become a barrier.
Yeah, well, it's our definition. Yeah.
Yeah, it only becomes a barrier when you allow it to become a barrier. There are going to be obstacles put in your way that you're going to have to overcome, and there's going to be challenges that you're going to have to move through and work through, but it only will stop you when you stop, and when you stop trying. And you don't even have to know. I believe that God put something in me, that I was one of those kids that it was well, I'll show you kind of. If you said negative stuff about me and what I wasn't going to do, I got an attitude about it. Well, yeah, well, we'll see. My stepmother and I had an awful relationship. She said I was going to be pregnant by 15. She said I couldn't do anything. I mean, it was a bad relationship. From age of 12 to the age of 18, all I thought about was I'm going to be 18 one day and I can move out of here. But I was determined. I wasn't going to get pregnant by 15. I didn't care how cute he was. I didn't care how sweet he sounded, what he said. Yeah, we could kiss, all that, but no, I ain't getting. She will never say I told you so.
There you go.
Not give her that pleasure. So I understood Saturday night when I heard Coco Gauff talking about thanking her haters and saying, instead of putting water on me, you were putting fire on me, gas on my fire, and it just built me. The more she told me what I couldn't do, the more determined I became to do things. And so I think that's just, everybody's not like that, and I realize that. But I think everybody can get like that if they want to. I think that it's possible that you can be that kind of person. You can learn to be that kind of person that uses your naysayers to fuel you and to motivate you to be the best that you can be. And so that's kind of how I got through that period in my life, I think.
Well, it's completely remarkable and admirable and so forth. And so despite having processed and moved through what I call compound grief, right? That kind of, you don't have time to fully recover if we ever actually fully recover from grief, but you didn't have time to process it fully. And yet you yourself define another year as the worst of your life. How is that possible, Lynn?
Well, Debra, I laugh because my life is just, when I look back at my life sometimes, I just have to laugh, because I just say, okay, Lord, I don't know why you chose me to go through all of this. And then later I did know why a little bit, but yeah, that wasn't the worst year, because the worst year I consider is a 12-month period. And that was in 2000, started June 2001. I was in private practice by myself. So everything I brought in, I had to kill what I ate. Yes. Kind of what we call it in the legal
field. That's what we do, yeah.
Yeah, you kill what you eat. And I had somebody working for me, so I had to help her feed her family. But I got to call my sister, the one that's closest to me in age, had her second aneurysm. And was in the hospital. We didn't know what hospital she was in. She had just called my aunt and said, I think I'm having another aneurysm. They're taking me to the hospital. So we had to figure out where she was. I had to take off, leave here, Florida, go to Texas where she lived for a couple of weeks, to just kind of be there, make sure she was okay, kind of, they had to do brain surgery, her second brain surgery. And just kind of arrange who was coming next and the siblings and my aunt and things of that nature. Came back to Florida, and a couple of months later, one of my cousins, who was like 4 months older than my sister, had a stroke and died. So we're dealing with that. In February of 2002, my oldest sister's in the grocery store right after her birthday, and she collapses, and they discover a brain tumor, and so she has to have brain surgery. So we go on, go to Georgia, deal with her children, everything. Come back in May of 2002. We get word that my great niece, Precious, who was 5 years old, was missing in North Carolina. A couple of days go by, we get the news that they found her body. She had been abducted and sexually abused and killed. And so we go through that with, going to North Carolina, dealing with that. And the week after we get back from burying Precious, the aunt that basically raised me, that I lived from the age of 6 until I came to Florida finally. I either lived with or 12 inches away from, had a massive stroke in the hospital. So that is what I claim is the worst year of my life. Yes. That was a lot.
That is, it's really unfathomable. And I read about your book, best-selling book, which is on order, and I invite everybody to go to Lynn's website and grab it. V is your first initial, Whitfield.com, and get it under publications. And the book is called The Party's Not Over Until God Says So.
Yeah.
So talk with us about some of your messages from like your aunt and so forth, as to how those may have helped you get through these horrific incidents.
Well, the story I'd like to tell everybody about is when I was 6 and we went to live with my aunt and uncle, me being the youngest. Some of us on here may be old enough to remember the bench seats in the front seat of a car. And so as the youngest, I used to have to sit in the front seat.
Yes,
and I sat between my aunt and my uncle, because Auntie would drive because Uncle Jack was blind and we weren't going to let him drive. So she would drive and I would sit there. So this one day we were out and a sudden rainstorm came up and we were driving, and I looked out and I could see people starting to pull over to the side of the road. But Auntie kept driving, and it started getting worse and worse. And we got to an overpass, and there were people actually stopped under the overpass. But Auntie, she kept driving. And it got so bad that 6-year-old Lynn just started screaming, "Stop, stop, we're going to die, stop." And she just looked at me just as calmly as she could and said, "Baby, those people that's pulled over on the side of the road, they don't know how long the rain's going to be here, the storm's going to be here. But if we keep driving, eventually we're going to drive out of the storm." And I didn't realize that it was a life lesson and a philosophy that she was giving me then. But as I kept growing and kept coming up through these challenges and kept having these storms come up in my life, I realized that if you keep moving forward, you may have to slow down a little bit. You may have to go a different path sometimes, detour a little bit. But if you just keep going, one step in front of the other, eventually that's going to be in the past, and you're going to be out of that storm and you're going to be moving forward. And hopefully you will have learned something for having been in that storm, because the storm didn't come just to have a storm in your life. There was a storm for a reason. And you need to try to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing now? What is it that, God is, leading me to? Because I used to say, God, you don't need a 2x4. Okay. You could just call me up and say, "Hey, Lynn, you on the wrong path. That's not what I meant for you to be doing. You need to go over here." But I guess he say I'm hard-headed sometimes. The only way he can get my attention is like close that door, like make sure it's got nails in it. There's no way you gonna try to reopen that door, okay? Because we'll do that sometimes. We
That's
know
right.
God closed the door, and we'll be over there trying our best to get that door open again. It'll be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be all kinds of things. But with me, he makes sure I know that door closed. You can't try to go through there no more.
Oh, how wonderful these lessons that you have gleaned. And then I was just reading along and you got yourself through that worst year and the year after and months after that by honing another skill, stand-up comedy. Holy camole. You are a woman of so many talents. Talk to us about how that came about.
Well, I'm just going to say this. When I recently got inducted into the Hall of Fame, my friend that did the introduction said the V stands for versatile. So he talked about the comedy, but like I said, so that summer I was going to Virginia to attend the NAACP's death penalty seminar because I was handling death penalty cases then. And before I went, I was talking to the same friend that introduced me, and I was just saying, where do the strong go when they need help? People so used to you being the strong one, but when you get hit with everything, where do you go? Who do you turn to? So he told me about T.D. Jakes had just come out with a book. He had done a sermon
T.D. Jakes
called God's Leading Lady. And he said his book, I just got his book, it's great. And so I'm one of them people, I'm going to get the book. So I got the book and I started reading the book. On the way to the seminar, there was a lot of things that happened that were funny. And so we said, we should do a skit because they have a talent show. So we should do a skit. So it's like, okay, we're going to do a skit. But as I was reading the book, one of the chapters talks about laughter being good medicine. And then everybody started falling out. Oh, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to put together a routine and I'm going to do it myself. I mean, how bad can it be, right? So I get up there by myself. I did like Janet Reno was running for, I think, governor. I talked about she was doing dances for $25. I was like dancing with a tree. I mean, I did a whole lot of things. But afterwards, people came up to me and said, how long have you been doing comedy? I was like, this is my first time. They was like, oh, no, kill it. You've been on TV or something, right? And I was like, no. And they had booed singers. So I was like, well, they must have really liked it. And while I was the next day, God just gave it to me. He said, you're going to have a coming out. So I put together a whole show, a 45-minute show. I invited all my friends. I had this big coming out. And as a result of that, I started doing clubs. But like I said, that was a challenge because I do clean comedy. So
there it is. There it is. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's a challenge because people are so used to the shock of the profanity and the sexual nature of comedy. So it's hard when you make people really think about it, and what you're saying. But I've gotten great reviews with it and stuff. And I don't know how much time we have, but if we have time, I'll do one of my signature pieces.
Oh, I'm definitely, we're having time for that. Take it away, sweetheart.
Okay, well. Okay, so I'm imagining that we have some single women. Single women, if you're single, please raise your hand in the chat or something, because I know I'm not the only single woman here. Because y'all know it's hard to find a good man now. You go to church trying to find a good man. Young folks, they go to a club trying to find a good man. We would even go to a health club, a gym, and sweat and mess up our hair trying to find us a good man. But I got news for y'all. I found out how to find a good man. Start reading the obituaries. Recently widowed. There's a good man out there for you. And they always say she left a loving husband. So he know how to be married. So this is what you do. You read the obituary and you find one. A viewing, gonna be on Friday night. usually between 5 and 8. Now, Black ladies on here, y'all know that means y'all gonna have to skip happy hour because y'all know y'all got to go. But get dressed up, go to the place, look around. You ain't gonna have no trouble spotting him. He usually gonna be the first one on the front row crying. Go up to him, introduce yourself. He gonna need a friend as time goes on. Why can't it be you? And then when the family get ready to leave, follow them. Do a drive-by because you gonna want to know what he got. See, you ought to be reading obituaries every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And every week you ought to be going to the funeral until you find your good man. Ding, ding.
Oh, you are the best. You are rocking that, girl. You are rocking that. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't show you some love for all of the accomplishments. I mean, you really were the only one, the first one in your family, the only one to get a 4-year college degree, and at Brandeis University, no less. You got then your law degree, and you've weaved quite the versatile legal career: prosecutor, then criminal defense lawyer. You served as city attorney for 3 different municipalities. And as you mentioned, just a little in passing, you were inducted into, are you guys ready? The National Bar Association Hall of Fame. What a prestigious accomplishment, Lynn Whitfield. Congratulations.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that.
You're most welcome. Now, who has a question for Lynn? Let's open it up.
I need that humor. Okay.
I
you
love
can have
that.
it, Barbara. You can have it. You can have it, Barbara. It doesn't take much.
That was amazing, amazing. And while others come into queue with their question, I want to know about your work and getting in that good trouble.
Oh, okay. Well, can I just say, before I say that, can I just say one other thing? Because I know we had talked about what were some of my charges. This book that you can't see now, okay, The Party's Not Over Until God Says So, actually came about because I lost my very first job as a lawyer. And I was the headlines of the local paper. And the headline said, for taped ex-prosecutor, the party's over. And so the book is The Party's Not Over Until God Says So, because when people write you off, they don't know what God has planned. God had a reason for me going through that. I wasn't supposed to be a career prosecutor. I was getting off track. I thought I was supposed to be. That's one of them times he used that 2x4. But again, in years later, I found myself in a situation professionally where I stood up, and at least I understand exactly what you're talking about. But I stood up and I ended up without a job after making a lot of money every year. But God led me to the work that I'm doing now with Transformative Justice Coalition. And we do voting, 85% of the work we do is in voting rights advocacy work. In fact, next week we'll be in DC training 50 young people from across the country to be voting rights advocates. We don't tell you who to vote for, but we tell you you need to vote. You need to have a say in your life, and you need to vote for people who have your best interests at heart. So we do a lot of stuff. We did the 15-city rolling protest through Florida in June to bring attention to the fact that we're going to stay woke in Florida, because if you're not woke, you're asleep. And we don't want ignorant people in the state of Florida. We want people that know what's going on and have an appreciation for their city, their country, their state, and their government. So we did that. We got talked about by the governor, but that was okay too, because it meant he was paying attention to what we were doing. So we love to get in good trouble. My boss has made a commitment to John Lewis as his body laid in the coffin on the steps of the Capitol, that they would continue his work and continue to make good trouble. So that's what we do. Now I love the work. I do also coaching, life coaching people because I believe that it's important that you do personal development. You can't get through your challenges unless you work on you and you know your value. Thank you for that question, Nancy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. All right, Lisa Perez has a question as well. So Lisa, if you'd like to go ahead and open up.
Absolutely. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So my question, your grief story is incredible. And having lost my brother and father within years of each other and then having to be their personal representatives, I had to delay grief until, the job was done. And I was curious if you had any thoughts on managing grief while managing life so as not to delay that grief. Is there really a way?
I think you have to acknowledge the grief early on. I think it can be very debilitating if you act like it didn't happen, or we're so good at let me put my head in the sand and just plow forward instead of stopping. Okay, no one says you have to wallow in it for weeks and months or anything, but I think you owe it to yourself to initially acknowledge the grief. My brother just died a year ago, yesterday, well, the 10th, yeah, so 2 days ago, been a year. And so I think you have to, but my stepbrother died 10 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever, but that was the harder one for me. I mean, people didn't believe it, but what I found myself doing there, I just had to take a couple of days and just really deal with it, and then I had to get to work. So you have to get to work, but I think you owe it to yourself, because you're going to grieve. I mean, you're going to always grieve the loss.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, great question. We can take another question. I see Colette, your hand is up, or Barbara, did you have a question?
I don't have a question, actually. I just wanted to say hello to Lynn and just say thank you so much, because you have been such an inspiration to me this afternoon. I really feel like my life is going through some sort of transformation. So just hearing your story today has really lifted me. And I just thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you for being on this call. All of our lives, I think, go through transformation. It's whether we accept that transformation or not. That's the question. It's when we fight it that we have a lot of difficulty. But I feel like I'm going through a transformation myself. So I'm trying to just figure out, just be still and let the Lord lead me on it. But transformation and change are good. Both are good.
Yes. I agree. Thank you so much.
Who else can pick Lynn's brain? Because boy, she has quite a good brain and a huge heart, and some of what she shared with us, but there's so much more.
Okay, you've overcome many adversity. Yep. Somebody else has a question.
Yeah, I see Muggs. Is there one thing you could offer us to keep moving forward after adversity?
I think the one thing I offer is, first, keep moving forward. That's the main thing. But second, process it. You've got to process it, and that's why my free gift, if you haven't gone to the website yet, if you go to it, you'll find that my free gift is 9 steps to overcoming the shame of failure. I don't think we're going to be able to see it. But when I say process it, because sometimes you had a part in it. And you need to realize what your part was, so you don't repeat that kind of mistake again. But also you need to process it so you can glean the lesson from that. Or is there a message from that? What's going on with my, why did I go through that? Is God trying to tell me something? Is he trying to get me somewhere else? Unfortunately for me, a lot of times I didn't realize what the lesson was till after the lesson, and after the manifestation of it, like lost my first job. miserable for a couple of years, lost my license for 18 months, had to come back, but came back in a different field, a different area, and went on to have a great career doing something else. That's why I always laugh and say, well, I was thinking I was going to be a career prosecutor, and God was like, oh, no, that's not your mission. Bam. Okay, get you back on track. But it took me getting to that new position till I really realized that I had gone off track. But also, I do think that moving through, you have to deal with you. I mean, when you have adversities in your life, I think that's the time to really get into personal development. What's going on with me? How can I be better? What do I have any limiting beliefs that are keeping me from being the best that I could be? All of that. I think all of those things, that's time when you work on you, being the greatest person you can be. Some of my daily practices that are not always daily, but I believe you need a faith period. If it's nothing more than when you're driving in your car and you say, Lord, thank you for allowing me just to be here today. If you don't do anything to say, thank you for allowing me to get up. I think about all the stuff I've gotten through and all the stuff I've gone through, but I own my own home. I still have my 2 cars. People thought I was going, crumble and fall, and I should have.
Yeah.
Should have. I mean, a lot of people in my position would have crumbled and failed when they lost their first job after going through law school and passing the bar and all of that, and all of a sudden being on the head. They would have crumbled and fallen. They would not have regrouped and come back stronger. But if God allowed you to do that, then you ought to do something with it. My book was written after my paralysis, after my brain surgery, because I was going to write the book about professional short challenges that I'd overcome. And God said, I want you to tell them every single thing I brought you through in your life. Start from your death of your parents. I want you to talk about losing your first job. I want you to talk about being a domestic violence victim and prosecuting people for domestic violence and going home and getting your butt whooped. I want you to tell people, I want you to tell about relationships you shouldn't have been in, that you were in. Because somebody out there is experiencing something, maybe not exactly what you went through, but close, and they don't know how to deal with it. And maybe they're reading your book. It's going to help them understand that and help them get through. And that's what I find. People read the book and they say, I got your book. I read it. I was going through something and it really helped me. And that's the most important thing to me. It doesn't matter if there's 50,000 people to read it or just 2. As long as somebody's being helped by it.
Well, Lynn, we thank you for all of this sharing. We thank you for your drive, your grit, your tenacity. You have surely made your parents and siblings and all the people with whom you have associated, both personally and professionally, proud as can be. You're on the national scale in a huge way with this Hall of Fame induction. And we are going to keep our eyes on you because you have not finished your work here. At least I don't think so. And I hope not, because this is the substance that I wanted to convey today. And you are bringing it with aplomb to give us the strategies and the wherewithal and dig deep and use our faith to propel us forward through whatever self-imposed, externally imposed challenges, and some of them barriers that we can actually just bust through, regardless, for us to be as full human beings and ambassadors for our mission as is humanly possible. I thank you, Lynn, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Deborah, for even doing this. Appreciate you.
Indeed. Thank you so much. So we're just going to wrap up today with putting a cap, if you will, on our day. And what a day it has been. This is back to our discussion earlier of how you could work with me. And I'm offering this as an opportunity because if you have come across beating yourself up for past what I call mistakes or missteps, or you're confused or downright overwhelmed, I want us to stop that. I want us to stop worrying about will we outlive our money and wondering if we're going to have enough money to actually retire or give money to charity. And so again, here is the effective or the intentional wealth creation course that I have given, and the tapes of those sessions are available to you in full for $197. It's generally a $500 value. And now I've added on a new opportunity because there are some in our audience that have taken this course with me live, and now they've realized where the gaps are, and we're tuning in one-on-one, and boy, we are catapulting ourselves forward. And I am giving those kinds of suggestions and strategies that you'll go ahead and implement with your certified financial planner. I'm not advising anymore, but I got enough wisdom to give you a number of strategies. And ultimately, Wendy said, I saved over $2,000 on my homeowner's insurance premium with just one tip. You see, that's what I'm going to be looking at. The devil is sometimes in the details. Yeah, we've heard that saying. And so I am so meticulous about finding opportunities for us to shine. I want us to win with our money. And Trish Carr says, having Debra's coaching prowess honed over 42 years is invaluable. I love being able to ask her questions about my specific situation. So there's a limited opportunity for a few of you. You can read about my past if you don't know me, but I would invite you to partner with me starting today. Yes, because in essence, we are as good as our next steps in terms of our trajectory. And I want us to bring ourselves into complete congruity with our mission. Yeah, I do. And so partner with me in order to do that in some capacity, and we will get to your fulfilling your mission sooner, with less stress, and probably on a very, very much larger scale than you had ever imagined. So with that, I'm going to invite you to consider this. Join us again tomorrow, because we are going to be back here with 3 more impressive women. Evans starting us off. Dr. Yvonne Oswald is our middle speaker, and we're ending with Linda Fisk tomorrow, 2 to 4 Eastern. Tell your friends it's still not too late to sign up. Thank you. God bless you. And let's become intentionally wealthy women. We can do it. Yes, we can. Good day.